everyone. Now that it's November, it's the perfect time to talk about things that we want to say no to. People, places, things, anything that drains our energy, takes away our joy, and more importantly, anything that makes us uncomfortable. This is the most important podcast episode that I've recorded so far, and it probably will be the most important episode I ever record because it addresses a topic that affects men and women, all ages, all races, literally everyone. It's not talked about nearly enough. It's a topic that thrives on shame and silence, and I want to change that. This episode is going to cover sexual assault, rape, and rape culture, and I'm just going to get right into it. I'm going to start with an article from June 10th, 2004 from the Philadelphia Daily News. Chiropractor Larry Turetsky finally admitted yesterday to sexually assaulting 7 women in his Northeast Philadelphia office. But even as the hulking 6'8" spine adjuster was pleading guilty on the second day of his common pleas court trial, he tempered the admission by offering a lame apology for 1 count of rape, 1 count of involuntary deviant sexual intercourse, 2 counts of aggravated indecent assault, and 3 counts of indecent assault. I'm not going to read the whole article. I just picked some highlights that I wanted to read. I apologize to the people that I've hurt, Turetsky said, failing to acknowledge the 7 victims, several quietly crying, who crowded the courtroom. I spent more years learning and helping the community than I have hurting people, he added. Turetsky lured many of the young women into his office in 2002 and 2003 by placing ads in a local newspaper seeking massage therapists, receptionists, or assistants. When the women arrived for interviews, he would offer to show them his massage techniques in a back room. During those demonstrations, Turetsky fondled the women, raped one, performed oral sex on another, and even snapped digital photos of a patient. The defendant is a sophisticated sexual predator, said prosecutor James Carpenter. The victims, who huddled outside court, comforting one another after the guilty plea, declined to comment. 2 of the women who spoke in court said Turetsky's assaults left them with nightmares, feelings of guilt, inability to maintain healthy relationships, and even a fear of doctors. Immediately after the sentencing, Turetsky was led into a cell room to prepare for his trip to prison. So that was an article from June 10th, 2004. And there's another article that I just wanted to read a few highlights from. This was also from June 10th, 2004, but it is from the Philadelphia Inquirer. In a quiet voice, Turetsky said guilty 7 times to charges of rape, involuntary deviant sexual intercourse, 2 counts of aggravated assault, and 3 counts of indecent assault. Common Pleas Court Judge Eugene Mayer immediately sentenced Turetsky to 7 to 20 years in prison, to be followed by 55 years of probation. One victim who was raped told the judge, "This happened about 2 years ago, but it's still something I think about every day of my life. I will never be the same person." The woman, who is now attending a police academy in another state, testified that the attack deeply affected the way she looked at all men, including potential boyfriends, doctors, and even her own father. "I couldn't look at any male the same because I couldn't trust anybody," she said. Carpenter told the judge, "This defendant is a sophisticated and serial sexual offender. There are 7 different victims, 7 different lives that have been deeply, deeply affected." This is from an article, July 30th, 2003, the Philadelphia Inquirer. Again, I'm not reading the whole article. I'm just taking highlights from some of these articles. As witness after witness testified About their assaults, the 6'5" doctor listened without emotion. Several of his petite victims testified that they had been intimidated and afraid to come forward. The majority of victims did not report their assaults until one assault was reported on the news. He allegedly told one victim, "Don't tell anybody. I do know where you live. I want him to go to jail. He will get what he deserves there," one victim said after the hearing. This is from an article from the Philadelphia Daily News, May 17th, 2003. Neighbors of Turetsky were flabbergasted to learn of his arrest. "He's the best person I know," said next-door neighbor. I will just leave her name out. "He's always nice. He always has a smile on his face. I don't understand how this can be possible." Another neighbor said that he was always quick to greet his neighbors. "He is a nice man. I can't believe this. I have nothing bad to say about him." You're probably wondering at this point why, of all the publicized cases of rape and sexual assault, I chose to read articles from 2003 and 2004. And the reason is because the woman that was raped was me. I was 20 years old when I was raped by Larry Turetsky, the chiropractor. I was on a job interview, and I wanted to start with the articles for a couple different reasons. Number one, it just makes you aware of the situation, how many victims were involved. And I know that there were several others that just did not want to come forward, which is completely fine. And I'm just proud of myself and the other women that did choose to come forward, which ultimately landed him in prison for a little over 8 years. And now he's on probation for at least the next 40 years. And he is also a registered sex offender. Um, my story addresses so many aspects of rape. For example, the fact that he was in a position of power. He was a very well-known and respected chiropractor. He wrote articles and was very well known in the Northeast Philadelphia area. As I read in the one article, neighbors were very confused and couldn't even believe that he was charged with, rape and sexual assault. It addresses why people don't report. I did not report the rape for 2 years, and the only reason I chose to report it was because I saw a story about him on the news, and the woman that brought this to the media's attention, she was a patient, and he pulled down her pants and started taking pictures of her, and she turned around, grabbed the camera, ran into the bathroom, locked herself in the bathroom, called the police, handed over the camera, and that's how this all started. And I give her a lot of credit, and I'm so thankful for her. But because of her, and seeing the story on the news, I decided to finally, 2 years later, go and report the rape. And then other women came forward after this, came out, basically. There was shame, there was guilt, which I will get into later. Another really interesting thing that I think it brings to everyone's attention is that I think there's this I know there's a misconception when you hear the word rape or when you hear sexual assault. Many people will picture, you know, a woman in a bar dressed a certain way, acting a certain way, which I'll address later. But my point is, I was wearing hospital scrubs, and I was on a job interview. So my point is, it has absolutely nothing to do with how you are dressed or if you're drinking or not drinking, or even where you were at. That's something really important that I will get into great detail later in this episode. But I just wanted to start off this episode with my story. And it feels very good to talk about it because not talking about it doesn't do any good. Other things have happened recently, which I'm not going to get into detail about, but basically has brought to my attention that I already knew that sexual assault, rape, and the rape culture were a huge issue. And I was already planning on talking about this in the month of November. But things in my own personal life, people that I really love and care about, things have happened that have brought to my attention how bad it is. And this is across the board. As I mentioned in the beginning, um, you know, it's it spans across all age groups. There are kids that experience sexual assault, and there are kids in middle school and high school that are being pressured to do things they don't want to do, and obviously adults as well. So this really affects everybody. I found something online that sums up what rape culture is to make it easier to understand what that term means. We live in a world where no means convince me, and flirting is a green light for sex, where women are told don't get raped and men are rarely told don't rape, where slut shaming is encouraged and victims are blamed, where speaking out about rape is a call for attention and rape victims are silenced. We live in a world where rape culture is normal and that is unacceptable. Something else I found online, I just basically gave a definition of what rape culture is. What rape culture sounds like, I'm going to read a selection of quotes from politicians. I am not even going to name them because these quotes are absolutely disgusting. Um, these are former presidential candidates. These are just politicians. Let me see who else is on here. Um, People in positions of power that are supposed to protect us with the laws that they pass. And this is really upsetting. So here are some of the quotes. The first one is, "Some girls rape easy." I don't even know. I can't even believe somebody would say that, let alone um, somebody who is a politician or anybody. It's just disgusting. Rape is kind of like the weather. If it's inevitable, relax and enjoy it. From what I understand, if it's a legitimate rape, the female body has ways to try to shut the whole thing down. I don't even know what that means. Rape victims should make the best of a bad situation. I would hope that when a woman goes into a physician with a rape issue, that the physician would indeed ask her about perhaps her marriage. Was this pregnancy caused by normal relations in a marriage, or was it truly caused by a rape? The facts show that people who are raped, who are truly raped, the juices don't flow, the body functions don't work, and they don't get pregnant. Another quote, what did they expect? In the emergency room, they have what's called rape kits where a woman can get cleaned out. These are hard to even read, to be honest with you. We do need to plan ahead, don't we, in life? I have a spare tire on my car. I also have life insurance. I have a lot of things that I plan ahead for. Concern for rape victims is a red herring because conceptions from rape occur with approximately the same frequency as snowfall in Miami. This is the last one. The odds are 1 in millions and millions and millions, and there is a physical reason for that. Rape, obviously, is a traumatic experience. When that traumatic experience is undergone, a woman secretes a certain secretion which has a tendency to kill sperm. They are the most horrifying upsetting, idiotic quotes I've ever read about anything in my entire life. But I needed to read those because, as I said, these are they were all quotes from politicians, and that's what rape culture sounds like, and I just needed that to be heard because there are a lot of people out there that think like that, and that is not okay. If that's how politicians talk about rape, it comes as no surprise to me that a rape or sexual assault victim's own friends and family may also blame or question the victim. I pulled up something on social media. It's hashtag why I didn't report. Some of the questions that rape or sexual assault victims are faced with: were you drunk? Did you lead him on? What were you wearing? You have no proof. Why now are you reporting it after all these years? Are you exaggerating? Boys will be boys. I don't believe you. You're being dramatic. You didn't get hurt. Did you scream? Are you lying? You never said no. He would never do that. These are just very common statements and questions that rape and sexual assault victims face, unfortunately, after already going through a very traumatic event. Their own friends and family, more often than not, can actually blame them, which they do not deserve. And that is not the right response to somebody that is, even if they're not reporting to the police, just talking to their own family or friends about what happened to them. This is completely an inappropriate response. As I mentioned in the beginning, sexual assault and rape thrive on shame and silence. It's really a vicious cycle. Someone is sexually assaulted or raped. If they do open up and tell someone, friends, family, and nobody believes them or supports them, then the sexual assault is not reported, and the person who did it gets away with it, and they continue to harm other people. This is exactly what happened to me. Um, I was in shock and ashamed and disgusted and confused and traumatized after the rape happened. I did not want to tell anybody in my family. I didn't want to tell friends. I almost just wanted to pretend it never happened. That was my way of coping at the time. Um, the thoughts that were crossing my mind were, if I do go to the police, number one, I will have to tell my family and friends, which I did not want to do for so many different reasons. And I figured if I do go to the police, they are not going to believe me. This is a very well known, respected doctor in the community with tons of money, and they might think I'm crazy and making it up for attention or for a bunch of different reasons, which obviously I was not. I thought that I was at a risk to be, even more traumatized and humiliated if, the police didn't believe me, which I knew was a possibility. I didn't know what would happen, and I didn't even want to put myself through that. So I figured if I just pretend this never happened, which of course never works out in the long run. But at the time, this is what I was thinking to myself. So eventually, I did open up to an ex boyfriend. And the only reason I opened up to him was because his brother was a police officer and I wanted to get his opinion. So I told him what happened, and his response was awful. And he said, I can't believe this happened to you. You're so strong. You're a kickboxer. You could have defended yourself. So after that reaction, I really shut down and really didn't want to tell people, not even my best friend, um, nobody. I did not want to talk about what happened. So I kept it to myself. And inevitably, what happened was that this chiropractor, sexual predator, continued to sexually assault people. And even yesterday, as I looked at his sex offender registry, it's still upsetting to me to look at the offense date of the rape that I reported and then the offense dates that came after that from other women, because for years there was this really deep, painful guilt that if I had reported the rape, then these other situations wouldn't have happened to these women. Since, this was almost 20 years ago, I have had to let that guilt go because I still don't know how the situation would have played out if I went to the police and reported this by myself. Um, and, collectively as a group, there were 7 of us when he was, when this went to court and he was eventually convicted, thank God. I don't know if it would have turned out the way, for example, I don't know if he would have spent 9 years in prison if it was just me reporting a rape. I don't know how much weight it would have carried, and I'll never know, but that's okay. Because, like I said, one of the patients came forward, and then that motivated me to go and report my case, and then other women came forward. So it all happened the way that it was supposed to. But my point is, going back to the vicious cycle, if victims, I actually don't even like to call people victims. I like to call us survivors. So if sexual abuse survivors are not believed or taken seriously and they don't report it, the person gets away with it and then they continue to harm other people. And this goes on and on and on until somebody puts a stop to it. The fact is, I should not have felt the way that I did. In general, I shouldn't have felt scared to report the rape, and I shouldn't have questioned, not that I shouldn't have questioned, this is going back to what rape culture is and how we're living in it. Um, I shouldn't have to wonder if the police are gonna believe me because he has money and he's a doctor. Um, I shouldn't have to feel like that, and nobody should have to feel like that. Um, Unfortunately, that's what rape culture is, and I read the quotes. I read the, quotes from the politicians earlier, and this is what we're dealing with. And it's an uphill battle, and it's something that really not only needs to be addressed, but it also needs to change, like, now. Um, it kind of reminds me, just to give a comparison, in October, I talked a lot about Breast Cancer Awareness Month and the pink ribbon and, just the pink wearing in general and all of the merchandise. And if you listen to those episodes, basically what I was bringing to everybody's attention was that there's nothing wrong with Breast Cancer Awareness Month and pink ribbons and wearing pink, but the awareness is just not enough. It's just not. Most of us are aware that breast cancer is a huge problem, and most of us know somebody, either a friend or a family member, that has or had breast cancer. Um, Being aware is just not enough. That's the first step, but there needs to be action. And, that's where the change comes from, not the awareness, but the actual action. So it's kind of the same thing with this. I know, again, I'm not saying this in a negative way, but a few years ago, the hashtag Me Too movement was huge, and I think it's great, but it's not enough. It brought it to everybody's attention. There were things going on in the media with, different cases, and this became a huge thing at the time. And I still think it's great. But again, it's more or less just bringing attention and awareness to survivors of sexual assault and rape, which is definitely necessary. But we need to take it a step further and start talking about, how do we change this? What do we do ourselves? What message do we tell our friends and family so that this can become a domino effect and, start spreading? It starts with ourselves, and then it spreads to what we teach our kids. And, even if you hear a coworker or a friend saying, a myth about rape or something inappropriate, just stopping them in their tracks and saying, no, that's not correct, and no, that's inappropriate. Little steps like that actually will eventually turn into a big difference. Um, Teaching our kids how to note basically what abuse is, and how that it can be somebody in a position of power. It can be a family member, a coach, a priest, a doctor. It could be a celebrity. It doesn't matter. It could be anybody in their life. And that's something really important that they need to learn at a very young age. Um, there are so many other things. There's another thing that I wanted to read that's on my phone now that we're on the topic. Parents, please teach your children about abuse, what it looks like, how sneaky abusers can be, and what kids should do if they are being abused. Don't just assume that you can protect them. Don't just warn them of the situations that you think they might face and keep them ignorant of others. Equip them to protect themselves. Prepare them for it. Help them know what to do, who to call, and how to stop it. Let them know that they have the power to say who can and cannot touch their bodies. Let them know that they can speak up, even if it's about a person they trust or someone in authority. Don't expect them to just know what to do. Don't assume that you can protect them forever, because you can't. The thing that sets apart sex crimes from all other types of crimes, well, at least one difference, is that survivors of sex crimes very often question or blame themselves. That doesn't happen with other crimes. And this happened to me personally. I did question myself. It was bizarre to me because I never thought that I would be in that position. And even, if you asked me before I was raped what I would have done in that situation, my answer 100% would have been I would kick and scream and bite and run out of the office and run to the police and report it and bring him bring him to court and do everything I could to get him convicted. That would have been my answer. Um, you don't know until you're in that position what you're going to do, because once I was in that position, I was in an office by myself with this huge, very creepy doctor. And all I kept thinking was he could kill me with his bare hands any minute. And at that point, I went into survival mode and I just wanted to get out of there alive. So my whole perspective changed. So you really don't ever know. And that's another really important topic to bring up, is that, as far as blaming, you can't put yourself in someone else's shoes because you weren't there and you don't know what was happening. So as I mentioned earlier, I told one person, an ex-boyfriend, what had happened to me. And, his response was completely inappropriate. He doesn't know what I was thinking or going through in that moment. And from his perspective, he said, you're a kickboxer, you're very tough, and I don't think you would let that happen to you. So that just goes back to victim blaming, victim shaming, and that has to stop. So for the years between when the rape happened to when he was convicted, all of those days, I would think to myself, there must have been something I did to make him think that doing that to me was okay. And the reality is that I did absolutely nothing wrong, but I did not completely believe that until he pled guilty. And in that moment, it was like the weight of the world was lifted off my shoulders. This situation always brings me back to my favorite quote, which is what my podcast is named after. Life is not about waiting for the storm to pass. It's about learning to dance in the rain. And even though this was something very traumatic that happened to me, and I did go through a very rough period when it happened, ultimately, I will not let anything that has happened to me define me or destroy me. Everything I've been through has made me stronger and more resilient and has made me who I am today. I could really go on and on for hours about rape culture and giving examples and reading articles and reading quotes. I don't think it's necessary. I feel like everybody at this point gets the gist of what rape culture is, and that that's the world we're living in today, and that it's a serious problem. I would like to end this episode so I can keep it short, and then I will make more episodes focusing on specific topics. So, the next episode, which I would like to have out by next week at the latest, will be about consent. So, the basic idea of no means no. Um, that's something huge that I want everybody to listen to, middle school kids, high school kids, adults. I'm going to cover a lot with that. But like I said, instead of making this a very long episode, I'd rather keep it short and just have other episodes so each topic can have its own episode. I would just like to end this episode by saying I would encourage you to share this episode with as many people as possible. It's important to spread awareness to topics like this, just like it's important to spread awareness about, breast cancer and other things. We need to spread awareness first. And then once more people are aware of rape culture, we really have to start acting. And as I mentioned, that starts with ourselves and then how we raise our children, what we teach our children. That's super important. And then, when we are when we encounter a situation where somebody makes a joke about rape or says something inappropriate about a woman, anything that is included in rape culture, we have to put a stop to that. So please share this episode and the upcoming episodes about consent and other topics that we'll be covering in November. And I just wanted to end with a very simple statement that I want everybody who's listening to hear. No matter what has happened to you, you are not damaged. No one can destroy you. You are not a victim. You are a survivor and a warrior. If you have any questions, comments, or just want to reach out, you can email me at valariedancingintherain@gmail.com. And my name is spelled Valarie, dancinginthe.rain@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you for your support.